Good afternoon, everyone. Anthony Tharp, giving a quick update. As I had promised that I was going to pretty much explain to everybody that's listening and viewing and paying attention to what's been happening, that we not only believe we were targeted randomly, we believe that it was a deliberate attempt and there was conspiracy on the side of agents of the government, whether for private benefit. I don't think the government itself had an agenda against us, but elements in the government of Jamaica did. And so they made it easy for Capital One to target us, or target me, in trying to shut down our business enterprises and the projects that we're doing. Of course, to the detriment of the entire country, without caring about what was happening to Jamaica. So I'm going to run through some documentation and some facts that we looked at, and based on the activities of these individuals and the fact that there were actually laws and the Constitution which indicated something was up with their lack of attention to what was happening, then it couldn't be just coincident that we're going through this. So as far back as 2007, when we started our business and started to, I had indicated earlier in an earlier video, in fact the original video, that we came into the real estate market in Jamaica with the intention of doing some major projects. And from we started, we've been getting flack from various elements of the government, and we're talking across the board, not just this administration but from the other. And when we sought assistance from them in terms of clarifying issues, there were virtually none. Must say though that most of our problems occurred under not the present administration, but the administration that belonged to the same party before. Because I remember Bruce Golding was in office when a number of these things occurred. And I remember we wrote to Mr. Golding and explained to him that we need to, one of the things that our funding agencies out of China, we got two development companies out of China, construction companies out of China, to pledge financing for us. One of those companies wanted to have a guarantee from the government that they would back up the projects that we were doing. Now, we didn't want to get involved with government, period, but to ensure that we did have a backup plan, we wanted to exercise all our options. So we wrote to Mr. Golding and explained to him that we were being asked by this Chinese construction company, which is Chinese government, to get a guaranteed letter from the government. So one of our joint venture partners, not technically a joint venture partners, but we're developing that particular property, he introduced us to a Mr. Barry Benito, who he said had contacts with the government and he could deliver the information and the request, which we did. We met with Mr. Barry Benito and he said he did, and he had the ear of Bruce Golding at the time, Prime Minister Bruce Golding. And I said, I don't believe in all of that, but went ahead with it because there was nothing wrong in contacting the Prime Minister to say this major project is being done or these major projects are being done, and it would be great if the government could facilitate the projects because it's going to be beneficial to the entire country. So he made connections, we sent a letter, and shortly after that there was a publication in the paper that my company, which was Karif at the time, and Finian, we were dealing in securities made by Brian Winter, and what's the other guy's name? Roper. Brian Winter and Mr. Roper, which of course again was allegedly fraudulent, and they went on nationwide and made this big publication. I'm in the US, staff is calling me that Mr. Thorpe, they say you're dealing in securities. That was about and that we were elusive of dealing with the FSC. We had documentations from Roper himself, because we had a meeting with him before I started business in Jamaica in 2004. I actually sent one of my representatives from here who had met Mr. Clark to go down and meet with the FSC to tell them what we're doing in terms of real estate and if there were any issues. So he met with the real estate board, he met with the FSC, and there were no issues. But once we came down and in fact, when I came down, I went there and met with staff at the FSC as well, and gave them the information and went over. And I said, we'll be doing this. We don't know it as being securities, but we wanted you to be aware of what we're doing, and if there are any issues, let us know, we'll remedy. No problems. Go ahead, do your business. When that whole Cash Plus thing came up, our name got thrown in the mix, because somehow they thought we were Cash Plus an affiliate, which we weren't. We weren't doing anything close to what they were doing. So the FSC then contacted us and claimed they wanted to get our documentations. Of course, we didn't hesitate. We sent it over, and we had an attorney, Turnquest, who we had hired as an in-house attorney. And when the matter came up, we called her up and said, listen, they made these statements about us, sue them. And she was like, oh, well, we don't do things like that in Jamaica. But I said, the first thing you need to do, sue them, then we discuss it later. Because what they did, they had our information, they had our documentation, and the statement they made was that we were not in touch, never been in touch with them, and we were trying to be elusive. So Ms. Turnquest at that point is telling us she doesn't go to court. Now, as an attorney, so we said, but you never told us that before. You came in, you asked for a retainer to be our in-house attorney, and if anything should pop up, then you would present the information. And then, so she said she doesn't go to court, but she had somebody in our office that would be. So anyway, there are two things that came up out of that. First of all, we had a meeting with not only the real estate board, who had made statements about us as well. And when we met with them on Duke Street, we met in their attorney's office down there. Ms. Turnquest was there. All the FSC board was, not the FSC, the real estate board was there. And their attorneys were like, oh, Mr. Thorpe, they couldn't have told you this. Because we filed that we wanted to have a license to be real estate developers. But there was no requirement for licenses. We had to just register. And they told us we couldn't get it. We had to do projects before we could get it. And I'm saying, but that makes no sense. It's either we have to get it before. And they were like, no, you have to do projects before we can issue any registration to you as a real estate developer. So we had gotten projects approved now and getting ready to go. When they came out, when the real estate board came out and made statements, oh, that we were out there, we weren't registered by them. And so anyway, we met with them down at Duke Street. Ms. Turnquest was there, and we pulled up the law, the Real Estate Act, and so said, so done. We didn't need to have a dealer's license, real estate dealer's license. And we, in fact, their attorney stated and apologized and said, Mr. Thorpe, we're sorry, because the minute you went in there and said you were going to do developments and you wanted to be registered, they should have. In fact, what he said, if we just implied that we wanted to be registered, then there should be no hesitance. So I apologized and said he's going to have them write to us an apology, and we could go ahead and do our business and just file to be registered, which is what we did. In fact, we're still waiting on the real estate board to give us that apology letter, because their argument was, oh, well, they made a publication already and your name is out there, and it makes no sense we publish anything or send a letter, because then it would probably drive your clients away. I said, no, we needed to clarify that. They still haven't sent us. This is from 2007 now, you know. They also owe me money, because we submitted a project, we got the full approval of the project, we had proposed 27 units of townhouse development in Manchester, and so we had to pay the entire fee for they approved 22 units at the parish council and NEPA. So we had paid the real estate board for 27 units or 28 units, and so we wrote back to them and said, well, we overpaid you, can we have our refund? We haven't gotten back that yet either. The argument was, oh, when you're doing other projects, so we know you're doing other projects, they'll apply the difference. We didn't hesitate or make any big thing over it, because we had 10 projects on the board, and most of them were either partially approved, some were already approved, projects that we had taken over, and so we proceeded to move on our projects. Shortly after that, in fact, people called us from Jamaica and said, Mr. Thought, you know what's going to happen to you next? The real estate board came at you and they weren't successful, so look out, the FSC is going to come after you next. Somebody actually called and said that to us. In less than a week, the FSC made some pronouncements and called the office and said, oh, they wanted to see all our documentations because they believe we were dealing in securities. So we said, but we met with you and you have all our documentation, and so what's the issue? So we sent over all the documents and we set up a meeting, because now they came back and said, oh, well, we want to meet. So we met at their office. It was a Friday, somewhere in, I think, 2007. And when we went there, George Roper was there. He was chairing the meeting. There were about 7 or so persons in there, with I think about 4 or 5 from the FSC, and we had about 3, including Ms. Turnquest. So at that meeting, they couldn't find anything, and I said to Mr. Roper at that meeting, I would prefer if they don't have any designation for us, create one, because we want to go about our business. And we didn't have any problems being regulated, because when we are regulated, it means more people would have more confidence in doing business with us because we're doing projects and offering products that were never ever offered in Jamaica or anywhere else. So he said, well, he was happy that we weren't going to be doing any securities and all of that. And when they looked at our paper, there were no securities there. So we left the meeting that there was nothing, we could go about our business. They had said they were going to send a letter to us within a 2-week period or a week period, clarifying, because we had sent over the documents. So they sent back a letter stating they didn't have any problems with most of the documents, but one of our equity documents they believe was a securities document. So we sent back to them and said, I don't know, you didn't have any problems with the joint venture document. Why are you having a problem with the equity arrangement, when in fact it's the same document? What we did was, persons we were going to do joint venture with, we just said equity partners at the topic or the theme, but the nomenclature of it all was that it's the same document that we said doing joint venture. So because we had on there equity, they misinterpreted it. I thought it was deliberate, thinking it was equities. And in securities, equities is different from equity in real estate. In real estate, equity means that the person has an ownership interest in the value of the project, meaning, so you have an equity partner. Anyway, they claim the equity agreement and the joint venture agreement. They said the joint venture agreement was okay, but the equity agreement was securities because we had the name at the top, equity partner. And therefore, it came now what they're saying, because this whole cash plus thing was going on Lint, and everybody is running all over the place, and so they were, taking advantage of that to put themselves in the press. And we said to them, all right, fine, send us a letter. We sent over the documents again and removed the equity and explain to them that equities and equity in real estate are two different things. So equities in the security business, stocks and bonds, is different from equity in real estate. And these are the ignorant things that we have to face with, because here again we had a government entity, people who were supposed to be regulators, who should know these basic facts, didn't know these basic facts. So instead of just apologizing and all of that, we wrote to them that we were going to go ahead with our business because we didn't hear from them. And they said they would have sent a letter within a week. We didn't hear from them. So what we did, the attorney wrote and said we're going to go ahead with our business. They wrote back, and if we go ahead with our business, then they are going to publish. So we put a publication in the paper explaining the difference between what we're doing. I was back in Florida making arrangements for a 6-city tour to Florida, to Fort Lauderdale, Miami, where we had arranged with the Chamber of Commerce there. We were going up to Atlanta, we were going up to Washington, on to New York, then Toronto, and then London for a 6-city tour to market our products. They were doing condos and commercial space, and we wanted to introduce the product to the general market in the global community, because that's where the bulk of our clients will be coming from, because these were high-end products and we needed people who had the resources to pay us. And plus we were now in arrangements to pay the Chinese construction company for their input. So we arranged this tour. I'm in Florida making arrangements for the staff to come up. We had gotten the visas, everything, staff was ready to roll and come up. We made, in fact, I think it was a festival. I don't know what the organization is in Jamaica again. They deal with the festival thing. We made arrangements for them to come on the tour with us. So they even paid up money for the people to get visas and all of that. So this was a massive tour to sell Jamaica. So when I was in Florida, FSC, Brian Roper and George Roper and Brian Winter had some public meeting with Nationwide Radio doing a broadcast. And when we were called that they listed our company as at the top of the list, saying we were dealing in securities and we were not meeting with them and all of that. Of course, when the staff called me, they were at the office at Knoxford Boulevard. So I told them, take all the documents that we had gotten from the FSC, including the letters, and go straight over there, because they were just over a hotel. I think it was over by Knoxford Court Hotel they were having it. So the staff went over, about 3 of them went over with the documentation. And when Brian Winter was up there, they actually went up and said, Mr. Winter, you made these announcements, but here are letters from you in exchange, correspondence between us and you. Why did you make that statement? He just got off the stage and walked. So we asked them to make an apology. They refused to. So we filed a suit against them. So from 2007, we filed a suit. The Attorney General of Jamaica apparently is the body that represents government agencies. And of course, that's a conflict of interest. Nobody that's being sued for defamation on a private level, because they weren't performing their jobs in terms of what the agency, the FSC, was about. They took it upon themselves to go out and make statements to be in the press. They were trying to steal the press and this whole glamour thing and celebrity, going to all kind of meetings. And it seemed like when they ate the food of these people, because I remember at one meeting they went to, we had an attorney in-house, Anthony Shimqui, and he said he was driving and he heard Brian Winter on the phone, some calling program, that he had gone to a meeting with one of these investment houses and they were having a dinner, and after the dinner he made a speech. So I don't know if he was paying for the free food he was getting, but he got up there, and here's this. The man actually got up there, and again, everything I'm saying to you is public knowledge. It's been in the press, it's recorded. He actually got up there, because I heard the recording after, and stated because we had an online business that were selling on online books and all of that, which we had purchased from a local person, and we were developing that into marketing our products online. He got up there and actually said, be careful of companies that have online marketplaces and selling books online. You have to be careful of those people. So I guess he was targeting us. What is he saying about Amazon now and all those people that were selling online? Because we were 2007, we would have gotten a major chunk of the market. Just like Amazon, we were doing the same thing and offering a variety of products. But here it was again, some local jackass getting on edge, and because he wanted limelight on stage and being, recognized as some celebrity, pretending he knows what he's talking about, went up there and tell people, be careful of these people because they're selling books online. So that's the kind of thing we have to deal with, and that's what we're dealing with now in the courts. So we figured it was a grand conspiracy because we met with another attorney's firm and we said, why are we being targeted? We're not doing anything illicit or illegal, but here our names are out there, our products are real estate. We're selling books online, and here's this guy making the statement. So we sued them for defamation, and we sued the FSC. And believe you me, up till now, 2023, we can't get the matter heard. I pressed the issue, and every time, in fact, up to a couple of weeks ago, in maybe end of the year, I wrote to the registrar and said, why aren't these matters being set? In fact, after I pressed the issue, I think somewhere in August we got a defense filed from the FSC. Now remember, we sued them from 2007, but it was in August of 2022 that we got some document, or 2021, that they were filing a defense. Of course, the statute had run and they were actually in default, but we couldn't get the matter set because, again, we have a government agency, the Attorney General's office, working with the Supreme Court of Jamaica and those people down there to prevent people's matters from being heard, because they can't win the case. And so they're going to do everything to delay the matter so it won't be heard. We sued them for $17 billion, right? Because of the massive amount of defamation that they had put out, and we can't get the matter heard. So we were targeted from then. So it's not a coincidence that we're going through this now. As I said, I don't believe in coincidences, because despite of what they did, we proceeded to put our projects out there. I remember the persons at NWA, National Works Agency, when they made a statement, called us up and said, but Mr. Thorpe, what they're talking about, we're the ones that have your projects and holding up the project. So that's the kind of thing we have to deal with. And I think, how can we encourage people to come into this country with this backward attitude, with these people undermine the very country that needs to get investors, and not only investors, your own investors that's going to make sure their money stays and works this economy, as opposed to foreign investors whose money migrate and leave this country, sucking it dry. You see, when government begs foreign investors to come in here, the money don't stay here. And here it is, we are local Jamaicans doing projects, major projects. Instead of getting the support of these people, they're trying to sabotage. They did sabotage us. And continuing the same sabotage by getting these people down at the courthouse to do all of this, preventing the country from being developed. And we're not the type that was going to pull money out. We were pushing people to invest in Jamaica because that's how we're going to build your country. And here we are, 2023. The FSC still isn't being heard. That's why I said I was going to point out to you why these government agencies, why these courts and the judges are doing what they're doing. This is not about just Capital One. They just took advantage of this to try to sabotage us on all fronts. So we filed a human rights complaint with a human rights agency the United Nations about what was going on. Because it's a human rights violation when people interfere with you earning or making a money, or that they work to prevent you from developing your own economy, because that's what they were doing. We were being prevented from developing our money or earning money or being, going to work. That these people not only forced us to close down some of our enterprises, but they caused over 20-something workers to lose their jobs. And these persons had jobs that were paying them well. We gave them, and that's where our business was unique as well. We had structured our operations to give every employee that was with us over 2 years and doing a good job share in 5% of our profits above what they would be earning. So again, do your maths, take out your calculator. We had 10 projects on the table. 10 projects, as we said, $4 trillion over 16 years. Now 5% of those profits, let's say we got profits of $2 trillion. 5% would have been divided amongst our staff. So you see the elevation we were giving to our people on the island, so that it could, build themselves up, as opposed to being exploited by foreign enterprises which took the money and left the country, like a dry husk, a coconut husk. When a dry coconut, we call it the husk. So here we are, a company doing all of that, and in addition to that, we had a special division within the company that was dedicated to charitable work. We actually adapted orphanages in Manchester. We sent letters out to other enterprises, major corporations, inviting them to let us unite and create a fund and work to generate charity that we could give scholarships. We gave scholarships to people going to the nursing school. And we didn't have to, but we did it. And that was to grow into something major, so that we would be helping our people to grow and avoid losing or falling into the trap of not having anything or hope after school or high school or whatever. So why would you sabotage a company that's doing all of that? Well, one of the reasons we were being sabotaged was because we were putting houses on the market. We were meeting with our members and working with them to develop a portfolio, a real estate portfolio, building homes for them, helping them to acquire property. And on top of that, those members, we were, as I said, encouraging them now to go online, and we were educating them how to work the international market to generate additional income in real estate. As we said, we were a full-fledged real estate company offering more products than the typical real estate company. But we were gearing our members, going to train them and put them with online jobs that they could stay here in Jamaica and work the US real estate market. So that's why I said a couple of weeks ago, we have proprietary products that are still on the table waiting for this court to stop Capital One and the co-conspirators, these judges, from handicapping and harming our business, harming my partners, and destroying the economy of Jamaica. Because they're killing the people of Jamaica who could be earning well, building this economy, so we don't have the level and spate of crime that we have. Because unemployment and hopelessness leads to crime. But that is what these people are doing. So we filed with the UN Division for Human Rights Violation under the Charter that the government of Jamaica, we were being targeted by the government of Jamaica. And we know this because we wrote to the government and we asked them to clarify and straighten out these things. We wrote to the people at the General League, not the General Legal Council, the Attorney General's office, and said, there's no way you could win this defamation suit because we didn't commit any crimes, we weren't doing securities, we were doing real estate, and too bad your people didn't know what equity in real estate meant. But we can resolve this, you just need to admit wrong, settle the matter, and move on. And here the Attorney General is sitting on these things and not moving forward. So They had filed now an application at some point saying they were filing to strike the defamation claim. Of course, under the rules of the court, that's one of the complaints you can file that the court can't dismiss on summary judgment. They can't dismiss anything that deals with the Constitution and anything that deals with defamation. So they filed that they wanted to strike this matter. You know, their argument that they put forward in the Supreme Court seriously. They seriously put in the court that this was a national security this was a national security issue. And so they couldn't give us any information. Because we're seeking discovery. Because we're asking them, come forward and say we were breaking the law. It's a national security issue. So my argument to them, we didn't ask you to publish anything about us. And all we're asking to straighten out and explain why you publish this about us. If it's a national security issue, you need to come forward and tell us what's going on. We never broke any laws. But seriously, they went in here about this is a national security issue. You'd think of some United States military stuff and top secret stuff. What kind of national security issue can no damn Jamaican Attorney General have for FSC, Brian Winter and George Roper go in there, go spread garbage about people, destroy this country economy, and they refuse to have the matter heard. They transferred Brian Winter over to Bank of Jamaica and make him stay to earn money. I think he retire now. So I would like to know when you go get money to pay us. And the Attorney General, as I said, the people of Jamaica and the taxpayers of Jamaica should not be defending people who break the law, because at the time they defamed us, it was illegal. It was actually a crime to make statements that were defamatory of people. So technically they committed a crime, and the statute of limitation does not run on them committing a crime, because the law changed. They did it when it was a crime. It was a criminal act to make statements that were lied, and they lied because they had information, because we met with the bastards. So again, that's what we have to deal with in this country. And for God's sake, why are you putting people through all of this? It's going to benefit the country. The 4-point-something million people, or 6-point-something Jamaicans, whether they're in Jamaica or around the world, are going to be benefiting from whatever we're doing. But you have, here it again, a small handful, 2 pieces of crap, George Roper and Brian Winter, go on stage at Nationwide, and that's the other thing I'm going to put a pin now. Nationwide went and published, broadcast all of this, so we could have sued them too, And now the press, and I said I'm going to do a piece of video on the press, because the press is one of the reasons why these things get the way they are and destroy this country. Because now we sent information over to Nationwide, on everything, and we're saying publish the facts so the Jamaican people can have it. The man over there is as silent as a lamb. In fact, lamb not so silent. They neigh or bray or whatever. Him silent as a lamb, not saying a damn thing. And that's what we have to deal with as a people. So here, complaint of human rights violation against Anthony Tharpe. And I'm going to show you just briefly. I'm not going to read everything. I just want to know we filed it. It's actually with the UN, and we serve this in the courts here as well on the current thing with even Capital One. So I just went sidetracked to show you the kind of things we have been going through with this nonsense, because the Jamaican government, through its various branches, target their own people to destroy them and destroy the country in the process. And you know how many foreign investors they pulled into this country? After that, they came, they build their projects, they're making a ton of money and sucking all that money out of Jamaica. So when our people go to them hotels that are owned by foreigners or foreign investors, and they pay the staff, they pay them. They pay the staff, but they barely can survive. And all the profits go out of this country. And the government is in support of that. but refuse to fix this where Jamaicans, we can put up hotels that belong to us, commercial centers that belong to us, proprietary products that will bring billions and billions of dollars into the Jamaican economy. And these are the things that the government has been in support of. And remember, the courts, the judiciary, is an arm of government. And you're going to see in the Constitution where they're breaching the very Constitution. And we can't get through. So the complaint is complaint of human rights violation against Anthony Tharpe. Of course, it's against my partners as well, but to keep them out of the limelight and keep them safe, because as we've indicated, we've gotten threats from a U.S. judge working with John Graham them and Capital One, because they're conspirators. So all of them doing it, whether they know what they're doing or not, that's just a conspiracy. And a trustee, Michael Bass, went to this judge, Paul G. Hyman, and got orders they were going to lock me up indefinitely if I don't stop fighting the fraud and the corruption. Imagine that. This is what these people support. Lock me up. I'm trying to build this country, build my partners, build my own economy. That's going to be beneficial to every Jamaican. It means our people wouldn't have been having this tax burden. It means taxi people wouldn't have been stressed with these super exorbitant tickets that nobody can afford to pay. And it's not only taxes, because when they give tickets to ordinary drivers on the street, there's some ridiculous tickets, the values of those tickets. And who can pay them? We think a lot of people refuse to pay the tickets because they're just bad. No. You have tickets at $5, $10, $15, $20, $30,000, $40,000, and with the threat of going to prison. Who can afford that when you get 10 of them? And one thing I'm going to say now, I don't support. One of the things I hate about driving in Jamaica taxis, to be honest, you guys are crazy. But guess what? There is a rule, the Limitation Act in the Constitution, that states after 6 years, any kind of financial contract or financial arrangement that's made, and it's not obligated, it's not honored, after 6 years that obligation ends. In short, they can't collect it. So all of you who they gave those tickets, and some of you have tickets over 6 years, you need to fight it on that level. Every ticket that's older than 6 years, you shouldn't pay. That's just a matter of constitutional law. So fight them. Do a class action and fight them. And it's a matter of standards. I'm not trying to get people to break the law. What I'm saying is the law should be honored by the government. And if the government and the Constitution has a rule that if a person has a ticket or some financial agreement with a state or other, and the Constitution says after a 6-year period, any financial agreement or standing or paper or whatever that exists, if the person didn't honor it, it can't be enforced if you didn't take action before. Then you should also follow the law. So I'm not encouraging taxi people to break the law. I'm encouraging the government to honor the law so that we can say to our people, and the government needs to be on top of the game. You don't go after people after you allow them to have tickets after 6 years. And it's not only taxi drivers. Those of you who owe the Water Commission is illegally trying to collect money from you, especially landlords. Landlords who have tenants who the Water Commission allow the tenants to run up the water bill to hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes, then come after the landlord after these tenants leave. It's illegal. For one, they can't force you to accept somebody else's debt. The Water Commission went into a contract with the tenants who use the water and ran up the bill. The Water Commission has a minimal, what you call a threshold amount of money that once you reach that, they're supposed to shut it down. So I think that threshold at one point when I checked, because they tried that with me once, was I think $1,200. It's probably more now because that was several years ago. And what they're doing, this illegal thing of saying if you don't pay it as a landlord after this tenant leaves, then the landlord is held to ransom, blackmailed by a government agency to pay water bills for somebody else who ran up the water in agreement with Water Commission. And on top of that, Water Commission made the water bills get to a state where it becomes burdensome for the landlord. So if they had cut it off, if they even wanted to use this illegal debt collection policy, cut it off where it's 1,200 or 2,000 or whatever the minimal, so that the landlord is only stuck with that amount of water, instead of you telling the landlord about $300,000 or $200,000. I think on one property, I have an interested party wanted to lease a property, and I used to go down to the property, and every time I'd come here, there was a pipe belonging to the Water Commission that was leaking in the property. And I went out to Water Commission out by Bogue, and I reported it, and I said, can you come and fix this? And every time they claimed, the argument I got out of there was, when they come and fix it, somebody always comes by and busts up the pipe and access the water. And I'm like, why you don't cover it? Why is it on top of the darn thing? So at one point, I got the money and go fix the pipe. So in short, I had people going out at this interested party about leasing part of the property. I said to them, well, I have never turned water on the property. That's one thing. He went out there. The only thing I did with the property, I went out and applied for a permission to connect the property to the sewer and water. But I didn't complete it. That was about 5, 6, maybe 10 years ago. And the young man went out and called me back and said, they're saying there's a $300,000 water bill. I told him, tell them I don't owe any water bills, so I don't know where they're going to come with that, because I'll take them to court. Because for one, I never turned on water from my other property. Two, they were having water running and leaking in my property where the guys couldn't even work. I paid to fix it, and I kept turning off the lock off at the road. And vagrants would go there and turn it on and use the water, including the guys that clean the streets, and that clean up along the highway. They do a good job. They come by, stop, get their water from there. So, in short, the government is embracing a number of illegal things, and they need to stop. One of the criminal acts that's going on in Jamaica too now is with the JPS. You don't have any services at JPS. You turn off either turn off the thing, person move, and you don't have any service to the thing, but they keep billing you. And when you go back to JPS now, you don't have any service, to the building. Everything that's on the meter before it comes through the meter to you is JPS, but they're billing you about, you have a connection or service, some nonsense like that. So you go there and you figure you don't owe anybody anymore. JPS is billing you for thousands of dollars, and therefore when you have to now go and give access to your building to a tenant, you have to go pay off JPS. All of those things are crimes. They're illegal. But again, Jamaicans won't fight it, and our elected officials allow it to happen. I think the Consumer Protection Board there needs to step up and step in. Just a sidebar. But these are the things we have to fix in Jamaica, because we have professional politicians who are there. They're not doing their jobs. They're not protecting the people. And it's the same thing that's happening to us across the board, down to these projects and our money that the Supreme Court is holding up. Sorry, let me try and rush through now. So the complaint of human rights violation against Anthony Thorpe. The Jamaica government's targeted human rights abuse against Anthony Thorpe started in 2007 when, through the FSC, the Financial Services Commission, the government alleged, as well as published in the Jamaica Observer newspaper, that Anthony Thorpe, that's why we sued the Observer too, because they published that and some nonsense, and they're running to hiding out. I think we finally got to trial in November from 2007. After much hiding of papers, disappearing files, we had to file papers for the court to waive procedure so we could get to trial. And the court already ruled that they defamed us, by the way, and they won't settle it. So They published it in the Jamaica Observer newspaper. As I said, was illegally that they published that were illegally dealing in securities. There were never any formal charges, trial, provision of any evidence proving the government allegations of security fraud or conviction of Anthony Thorpe. Yet the government of Jamaica published and caused to be published warnings to the Jamaican public and other businesses that they should refrain from doing any business with Anthony Thorpe and his company. Failing to do so, they would also face legal consequences. Yeah, that's true. They actually published and threatened people that if they did business with us. Only come to find out that the Observer was Butch Stewart's company. And one of the law firms we went to actually said, you really think it's coincidence that the Observer newspaper published this and refused to retract when they're owned by Butch Stewart's company, and you're bringing a major hotel right beside his hotels to compete with him? I think Butch Stewart was an intelligent person, because if we were doing that and the products we were bringing, he would have brought business to his company as well. I don't know. That's what one major law firm stated. So, coincidence that the biggest hotel chain in Jamaica, we were putting up major hotels that would compete with his hotels within walking distance, and here the Observer published defamatory statements. And when we called the publisher, the Observer, he said he didn't know that it was published. So he put us on to the attorney for the Observer. I think it was a car or something or another. And we said, why would you publish something without first checking? Because the publication was, my company crashed, and we had investors with how many money, and they lost the money, and we don't know how to get it. We didn't have one investor. Not one investor in my company, because we weren't bringing on investors. Not one investor. They published we had how many investors, and investors had how many $1,000 invested with us. All the money that was in my company, that was being worked in my company, was my money. Alright, so we never had one investor. We had joint venture partners that we were working projects that they own the property. Not one investor. And so that is why these people are running and hiding, and we can't get the matters heard. So I'm indicating to you now, directly and indirectly, that the Supreme Court and these judges down there aren't just sabotaging us on this Capital One thing. They're sabotaging us on these other matters. Because here now, I mentioned to you the Observer, that we sued for defamation, that the court, Mrs. Justice Straw, ruled and made in her ruling that she don't see how they can get out of this one. And when we went to the appeals court, because I had refrained, well, because of some issues, I wasn't in Jamaica. We missed the timeline to file the suit, so I had to file with the appeals court for leave to appeal. And when we went to the appeals court, I remember they had some student attorneys there, right? And when I said to the appeals court, my lord, these people made these publications, they haven't provided any evidence of anything, plus the matter was already ruled on by Justice Straw, and Justice Straw said she don't see how we could get out of this. And the student attorneys, they busted up, because I don't know if it's how I said it, but they were laughing their heads off in the back. And one of the justices, there were three, a panel of three, a lady, I don't remember her name now, she looked and said, the justice wrote that? And I said, yes, it's in the judgment. And on top of that, the Observer, when they filed a defense, they admitted that they committed 16 out of the 32 or 30 some defamatory allegations are true. So how are they going to get out of it? Only way to deal with it is to hide stuff and have the court hide it. The registrar's office at the Supreme Court refused to send the files over to the appeals court. I mean, refused after we pay the fees. So you see, it's not just one incident. And again, if it's happening to me, how many other people in Jamaica are facing this nonsense in the court? And there's no way to deal with it? No, Jamaicans have to make a difference here. It's not just me. I'm just indicating to you, if that could be happening to me with this degree of fraud and corruption, what else is going on there? So, just reading where they did all of this publication, they couldn't back it up, so we filed a complaint under at the UN. And of course, I had mentioned to you before that the Magnitsky Act, where the US Congress passed a law about this kind of fraud, because again, Capital One uses fraud to steal the identity of my company, then they attempt to lock me up. The allegations by their own people to say I must be careful because gunmen were laying wait at the Queens Drive property for me when I was in Jamaica. And so these are the things I'm saying to you that we have to deal with. I had already mentioned the as I said, the MAGNITSKY Act, which was passed by Congress in 2012. And again, you could look it up and read up what they did to this poor guy. Killed him. Took his life. Here. This is from 2000. September 17, 2014. They filed criminal charges at the fraud squad. Government agency not doing anything. Why? Why? Those are the things we have to deal with. Okay, yeah, this is what I wanted to. Alright, so because of that, we filed a claim as in the court. It's December 4th, 2019. We filed a claim against these individuals. I think I already showed you, because they are most of them are government agents or agencies, and they refuse to take action. Why am I in this position where all these government agencies refuse to take action and we are the victims? So it's not only John Graham and Capital One are involved in a conspiracy. These government agencies are part and parcel of the silent conspiracy, because they refuse to execute the duties that they were given in the first place to protect us. So it says claim number SU 219, I think 010418. No, it's CV, sorry. 2012. Yeah. No, 2019. CV 04818. The clerk's writing not so clear. And it says between Anthony Thorpe, claimant, defendant, Jamaica Constabulary Force, Minister of Justice, Chief Justice of the Jamaica Supreme Court, General Legal Counsel, Governor General of Jamaica, Integrity Commission, John Graham, Stephanie Graham, Justice B. Morrison, Justice K. Anderson of the Supreme Court, Alexis Robinson, the Jamaica Supreme Court itself, Registrar Angwin. All of them refused to do their jobs. So we filed that suit against them. And as I said, we'll run through just a thing in the Constitution, and then I'm going to close off so that you see. Oh, the sun is on this thing. Kind of blinding. I think maybe that. Okay, that might work. So, effects of this constitution. This is Jamaica Constitution, and I'm just doing that so you know. Again, these people are in breach of the Constitution. everything they're doing in not doing the right thing. Subject to the provisions of Section 49 and 50 of this Constitution, if any other law is inconsistent with the Constitution, this Constitution shall prevail, and the other law shall, to the extent of the inconsistency, be void. So anything else that's out there that violates the Constitution, so any ruling of the court that violates the Constitution has to go. And I'm saying this because actions taken by Justice B. Morrison, Kirk Anderson, defiling the rules of the court and depriving us of our property and our rights and the successors of interest of their property and rights is in violation of the Constitution. It's in violation as a rule of the court now. But I'm just saying, beyond that, the Constitution is saying, even if these guys had made rulings, which some of them did, that contravenes the Constitution, then those rulings are void, null and void. They are no use, they are no good, they can't be used. And that's why I'm so adamant that when they did these things, they did it illegally and in violation of the Constitution, and therefore it couldn't stand up. But the only way to keep those things in effect is just not to set the matter for hearing, which is why the registrar is very significant here. And I think I might have to go sue the registrar, because the registrar is responsible for setting these matters for hearing. Now, hearing from her, and every time we write to her, there's no response. So, subject to the provisions of Section 49 and 50 of the Constitution, if any other law is inconsistent with the Constitution, this Constitution shall prevail, and the other laws shall, to the extent of the inconsistency, be void. So any laws that come out to the court that's in violation of the Constitution is no good, has to be kicked out. So Chapter 3, Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms of the Jamaica Constitution. And it says fundamental rights and freedoms. Whereas the state has an obligation to promote universal respect for and observance of human rights and freedoms, all persons in Jamaica are entitled to preserve for themselves and further generation. All persons in Jamaica are entitled to preserve for themselves and future generations the fundamental rights and freedoms to which they are entitled by virtue of their inherent dignity as persons and as citizens of a free and domestic society. Remember, I talked about the human rights violations we filed in the UN. This is some of the violations that forced us to file, because again, the human rights violation and hence justifies why we filed it. So all persons are under a responsibility to respect and uphold the rights of others recognized in this charter. So again, every judge, every person, every lawman, every minister of government has a duty and a responsibility to respect and uphold the rights of others, our human rights, and it's not being done. The following provisions of this chapter shall have effect for the purpose of affording protection to the rights and freedoms of persons as set out in these provisions, to the extent that those rights and freedoms do not prejudice the right and freedom of other persons. Now, everything that we've been violated on, none of those things affect negatively anybody else. Everything we are doing or will do is to the benefit of the people of Jamaica. I'm in a bad spot this sun. Now just bear with me, I'm just going to wind up. Subject to section 18 and 49 and subsection 9 and 12 of this section, and save only as may be demonstratively justified in a free and domestic society. This chapter guarantees the rights and freedoms set out in subsection 3, 6 of this section, and in section 14, 15, 16, and 17. All those sections deal with your fundamental rights and freedoms, and they can't be violated. Well, they shouldn't be violated. Parliament shall pass no law, and no organ of the state shall take any action which abrogates, abridges, or infringes on these rights. So, organ of government again of the state, which is the court is one of them, should not be involved in any action that violate any. They can't pass any laws, not even Parliament, that violates these laws. Yet we're getting these people in court doing exactly that, violating our rights. The rights and freedoms referred to in Section 2 are as follows: the right to life, liberty, and security of person, and the right not to be deprived thereof except in the execution of sentence of a court in respect of a criminal offense of which the person has been convicted. None of us have been convicted of any criminal offense. And when the FSC made a publication accusing my company of dealing in securities, they did it without any kind of due process, which was also illegal. So hence the reason, defamation, they can't win the case. Now I don't know why the Attorney General is in there trying to waste taxpayers' money when they shouldn't be representing criminals. Because when they defamed us at the time, it was a crime. And when you commit fraud, which is what they did, deceptive promotion of themselves so that it could get jobs and better payment from private industry, because I think Ropa is working with NCB or something like that. So they did it for their own personal benefit. I guess just like those people at SSL, a lot of it is alleged that a lot of the FSC people got jobs at SSL after they acted in self-conflict or conflict of what they should be doing to protect people and investors. Hence the reason, cronyism and corruption. So, the right to liberty, life, and security of person, the right to be not to be deprived, and therefore except in the instance of somebody committing a crime. We haven't committed any crime, so there is no excuse. The right to equity before the law. That means we should be treated equally before the law. The right to equitable and humane treatment by any public authority in exercise of their function. So this kind of treatment that we're getting, inhumane treatment by a public authority, is not to be done. Yet we're getting this from the Supreme Court and from those government agencies that refuse to act, like the FSC, the fraud squad, not the FSC, the fraud squad, and those other got the name, Integrity Commission. Yeah. All right. The right to freedom and the right to freedom from discrimination on the ground, discrimination on any grounds, I think. The right of everyone to protection from search of person and property. The respect for and protection of private and family life and privacy of home. Protection of privacy of other property and of communication. So when John Graham and Alexis Robinson and Capital One hired guardsmen to go put my life and my property and my home in the public realm, so God knows what could happen, they violated the Constitution. The right to enjoy a healthy and productive environment free from the threat of injury or damage from environmental abuse and degradation of the ecological heritage. So again, major protection from all those actions. The right of every citizen of Jamaica, the right to protection from torture, inhumane or degrading punishment or other treatment as provided in Section 6 and 7. Remember, if you don't consider how we've been treated, degrading and inhumane, then something is wrong with people who figure that. I mean, you're abusing us, you have our property locked up, we can't get our lives together because it's a violation based on the UN Charter. So they've been violating that right. We've been tortured, as mentioned earlier, some time ago. We are literally being held prison by the Supreme Court, prisoners. The right to freedom of person as provided in Section, the protection of property rights as provided in Section 15. So property rights are being violated. They went and filed documents in the court that I'm trespassing, committing a crime on my own property. Because trespassing is a crime, all right? And it goes on. The right to due process, again, just mentioned trespassing is a crime. We have a right to being for due process. That's not being done. So, winding up here, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen again. Hopefully this again will alert you to a lot of the nonsense that we're dealing with. And as you can see from a constitutional perspective, we are 100% within our rights. We can't lose any case based on the evidence, the constitution, the law, and what's in front of the court, because we already won the case, remember. So why are we here? Protect yourselves, learn your constitution. Don't think it can't happen to you. So please share and subscribe, get the information out. As I said, my objective is to help fix our problem, fix Jamaica's problem at the same time, because it's going to prevent a lot of people from this kind of harm. And so transition, once we get that resolved, we're going to go on to build our projects. So it's not an end game for us. We want to move on. So again, thank you. Like the video, subscribe, please share, start those community organizations so we could really make a difference. And don't be intimidated by these people. I mentioned a few things. If you're a landlord, property, and National Water Commission is blackmailing you to pay somebody else's water bill, get in touch with me. Let's pull together, all of us who are landlords and own property and you're in that position or wherever in that position, so we can sue them. If any agency or government claim you owe them money that's owed more than 6 years and you didn't pay it, then you need to take action against them as well. Don't let them intimidate you. Don't let every dime you have is money you could be investing in your future. Don't let government rob you. And one of the things Jamaicans need to do, as a matter of fact, is all of us who are paying property taxes and they're not fixing your road, they're not giving you the water, they're not providing you with light, and I think light is JPS, but it's connected somehow with government as well. If they're not providing the services that you're paying taxes for, file a suit against the government for fraud and withhold your taxes in an account until they start delivering. Hold these people accountable, because unless you do, we'll always be treated with contempt by these individuals as if they're doing us a favor. They work for us. Fire them. Let's fire them if they're not working for us. You aren't getting water. Your roads aren't being fixed. My mother lived on a street and I think it was finally paved maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, after about 40 years, right? And they were collecting big money from her all that during that time. And then it got to a point where taxis would even go on the street. So again, we need to hold them accountable. They work for us. We don't work for them. Have a good one. Enjoy your weekend. Again, get in touch. Let's make a difference. Bye now.